Okay.
We're alive.
Okay.
We're alive. Everybody can hear you.
Okay.
We're alive. Let's see. Sugar Mina. Yep. And how's it from Jacksonville, Florida? And then we have everybody on YouTube. And we have a bunch of people on chat here on YouTube, which I cannot see. So I guess we'll. Oh, there it is. Peekaboo Aloha. Cheers from Oahu. Right. And then Aloha from the Bronx. Aloha. So the theme of this evening's live is bones. We're going to talk about Evie, and we're going to refer to some old newspaper articles from back in the day, and uh, how they handled Evie when they found them. And even back then in the 1800s, they were still finding remains of our ancient ancestors. And some of these articles are interesting in that there's some facilities that we all know about, and there's other locations that are long gone. But the way in which you will find out as to oh, the way in which you'll find out as to how the bones of our kupuna were handled will will surprise you. In fact, there's a couple of photographs that hopefully we can share with you. For those of you who are here on Instagram and YouTube, won't be able to see those articles, but I'll be reading them for you, so you know the content of what's going on. Let's see, and let's start. I like to start with this chant because this oli is descriptive of the place where I live, and the chant talks about the things you can see from the place where I live, from Wailai, looking toward Waikiki, and it talks about an expanse of kalu grass that you could see from the Wailai area. I think like City Mill side or a little bit up, and you can see the kalu grass that was so expansive that when the wind blew through the kalu grass, it seemed like the ocean itself. The way the wind would blow the grass, and so in some instances you couldn't differentiate between the kalu grass and the way the wind moved it and the ocean itself. So beautiful, beautiful oli. And when Kumukalani Akana taught that to us in our oli class and explained the meaning of it, I really, really fell in love with this chant. And this oli, especially if you watch Mary Monarch, you'll see a lot of Kumuhula use it as their oli kahea. And so I offer this. O no heo kia li po lena i kagaye. Le ia I ki o ho kalu kalu nu a o ki uki. Nono pu ka uki uki ka mako ke ko la. Kua hine pua kaia ulu o lalo e. O lalo o ki waia kana ulu. I kahi mea I ki huna, ka mako huna. Me he haila I ka pili o hue. He mai. Mahalo. Mahalo nui. So, here we go. We'll start with this article from 1898. Oops. Let's try that again. Technicalities, I tell you. All right. Let's see. I may need my glasses for this one, so hui color my. So the article is, apologize, the one from 1898 is being a little bit kolohe with us. So the article is 1960. This is from Sans Souci or Kaimana Beach, that area. And the article is entitled Ancient Bones Uncovered at Sans Souci. And the article goes like this. Bones which may have been those of ancient Hawaiians buried where they fell in battle are being unearthed by construction crews at Sans Souci at 3877 Kalakaua Avenue. The ground site of an apartment building was blessed yesterday morning by Reverend Abraham Akaka. So for those of you who are about my age and older, you remember Kahua Kaka from Kauai Hawa Church. So the blessing was done at the request of the workers. The workers of Haas and Hamas Construction Company first uncovered a skeleton late Thursday afternoon. They phoned Akaka, pastor at Kauai Hawa Church, and he agreed to go to the site at the beginning of the workday yesterday. Before he arrived, the skeleton was found apparently in a standing position. The workers built a special box for the bones, and Akaka told them to put into it also any others which may be uncovered before construction is finished. The reburial will be arranged. Akaka has been inquiring into history of the area, and he said yesterday he hasn't found any of Sans Souci having been a specific burial site. Since bones have been found scattered along near the shore all the way to Port Locke, he said, he tends to a theory that in ancient times, warriors were buried wherever they were found after warfare. The coast would be a natural war area for defenders fighting invaders. If the same procedure were used as followed the discovery of skeletons at a Bishop Estate project near Portlock, the recovered bones would be turned over to a mortuary and reburial would be in a modern cemetery, Akaka said. Here's a short one, and this is from, let me get this thing here. It's being so fickle. This is 1929, John Ina Road. It's a very small article. It says, bones found in yard at Waikiki. A skull and the bones of upper part of a human body were found this morning in the yard of a house at 485 John Ina Road, occupied by Miss H.D. Richardson. So right now, a lot of you might want to Google the address, see if it's still valid. If it hasn't been taken over by construction. 485 John Ina Road, occupied by Miss H.D. Richardson. The skull and bones were found by workmen who were engaged in removing a tree which was blown over during last week's windstorm. Now, the reason why I just asked you if you may want to Google the address is because we did a blessing a few weeks ago at the airport. And I forget the name of the road, but according to Google Maps, the address took us to the other side of the airport where the federal facility is, the federal prison. And so it turns out we had to go in the opposite direction to find the facility to bless it. And when we looked at the actual place where the blessing happened, and across the tarmac is the federal facility, the prison. And we realized at one time this must have been an actual road until they built the airport on top of it. And so that sort of explains why when you're trusting Google Maps to give you directions, it might actually give you directions to the original facility, the original road, the original location, which is kind of weird, but very interesting. And again. The article says, bones revealed as workers dig test pit holes. It says, oh, here we go. You guys can't see it, but every time ads never fails. Portions of 3 skeletons are unearthed at 4-foot depth, a depth of 4 feet. Portions of 3 human skeletons, including the skulls, were dug up this morning by employees of the Hawaiian construction company engaged in sinking tests. Let me do that again because we have noise in the background. Portions of 3 human skeletons, including the skulls, were dug up this morning by employees of the Hawaiian contracting company engaged in sinking test pits at Bishop, Queen, and Halekauila streets. So figure that out in your mind. So the intersection of Bishop, Queen Street, and Halekauila. But don't Halekauila and Queen Street run like side by side? Okay. The site of a proposed garage and office building planned by Walter F. Dillingham and Associates. The skulls are apparently those of 2 men and a woman. One was smashed when a pick point struck it. The other two are intact, and all of the teeth are in place and perfectly preserved. By the state of the teeth and the lower jawbone of the skull that was broken, it is believed the skull was that of a man of great stature. All three skulls, together with a pile of various human bones, were found at a depth of about 4.5 feet in a test pit at about the center of the site alongside Bishop Street sidewalk. Other bones may be seen embedded in the dirt in the sides of the pit. It is not known whether the workers stumbled upon some ancient Hawaiian burying ground or upon the site where a battle might have taken place. So here's the pictures. Okay, so we have New York nerds saying now John Ina Road is just Ina Road. 4780 Ina Road is the Irish Rose Saloon. I think 485 John Ina Road became a parking lot, or probably an intersection, or maybe a 7-Eleven. And this one is from 1915. Human skulls uncovered by earth diggers. Workmen on building site find remains that may develop a mystery. What may develop a mystery was revealed this morning when two human skulls and human bones were found by workmen while excavating for a new building at Alakea and Merchant Streets. I wonder which building that is now. Is it the Podmore? Is it the First Hawaiian? Is it the building across the street where the Domino's Pizza is? Or is it the one across from the next to the Podmore, where if you stand on the corner, you're looking at the Podmore, the First Hawaiian Bank building, and the one across from that? The bones were in fair preservation, but appeared blackened with age. They are believed to be those of a man and a woman. One skull is much smaller than the other. Each still held a number of teeth. Police officer Sizemore took charge of the find. He reported the matter to Sheriff Rose, who will turn the bones over to the Territorial Board of Health for disposition. In the excavation for the foundation of the building, the workmen had reached a depth of about 5 feet. They were removing a quantity of coral covered with black volcanic sand when a round mass rolled to the feet of the Japanese. When loose earth was removed, it revealed the skull. Digging was then directed at this spot. A portion of the other skeleton was soon found. The bones are believed to be those of Hawaiians. Now, this would completely make sense because if you look at those old maps of, Mamala, now Honolulu Harbor, those surrounding areas, it would make sense if you're digging that you would find coral first, and then everything else after. And a lot of coral reefs, especially those in Waikiki, were places where bones were found as well. So this would make sense. Let's see. How are you guys doing? Is it raining where you are? Because it's raining right now here. Relics are found when bodies are removed. The article says, moving the dead from a cemetery sounds difficult, and it is really more so than it sounds. Charles Osborne of Williams Undertaking Parlor has such a task, and although he has encountered considerable trouble, the work is interesting. Williams's contract is to remove for the Territorial Hotel Company the remains of about 60 bodies said to be in the old Kauai House Cemetery across Kalakaua Avenue from the Moana Hotel. So on Kalakaua Avenue, everybody, funny, yeah, Avenue. On Kalakaua, where the Moana is, what is across the street directly? Anybody know the hotel directly across the street from the Moana Hotel today? So if you think about it, they're referring to the Princess Kaiulani Hotel, or as they call it in the tour hotel industry, the PK. The hotel people have leased the property from the Kauai Ha'o trustees with the proviso that the bodies be reinterred in the old Kauai Ha'o Cemetery at the corner of King and Punchbowl Streets. So interesting, a Kauai Ha'o church in Waikiki, and then the one on Punchbowl, South King, Queen. Osborne has employed about 20 workmen to dig up the entire plot and to place the bones, which are found in new caskets. He says that although there were only supposed to be 50, he believes there are about 50,000 from the number of bones found so far. 50,000 remains. 50,000 remains. If you think about it, that would make sense, especially the location and the entirety of Waikiki. 50,000 remains. While Osborne is superintending the cemetery removal, the gang of Japanese are tearing down the old Waikiki church, which has stood for about 60 years, it is said. Raising the building is not nearly the task that the cemetery removal is, and the old edifice has gone down fast. The Japanese paid a small amount for the lumber in the building, but it is worth little because of its worm-eaten condition. Many interesting incidents and stories have turned up during the gruesome operations in the cemetery. Several very old Hawaiians who knew some of those now in the graves have gathered in the graveyard to talk over old times. From these conversations, it is gleaned that the graveyard bears some who were buried over a century ago when the church was built. So, if everybody has not figured it out, this is Princess Kaiulani Hotel, probably toward the International Marketplace, and in the opposite direction heading toward the Hyatt. And who knows how much further back. Kuhio, maybe toward Aloi and Relina. And let's see if we can pull this one again. I like this one because it's sort of unusual. If you're looking at it, the article, it says a Golgotha at Waikiki. So right now, all of you who are watching, listening, get out your dictionaries. If you have to cheat and do an online dictionary, go ahead and do that. Okay, Java, or is that lava? And look up the definition of the word Golgotha. Golgotha, a Golgotha at Waikiki. Go look up the definition of that word right now, dictionary, online, and you'll see how it applies to the heading of this article. Several human skeletons found in one burial. Evidence that there are remains of heroes of the defense of Oahu against Kamehameha the Great. The article says it is a strange coincidence that while Minister Damon's bill to provide for the preservation of ancient heiau and pu'uhonua is pending in the legislature, a heiau not hitherto heard of in these days should have been unearthed in the suburbs of Honolulu. That is what happened yesterday. So here it is, and let's see. We'll refer to the year that this took place. But here it is during those times where you have a Damon of Damon Estate saying, and I quote, he has got a bill to provide for the preservation of ancient heiau and pu'uhonua is pending in the legislature. Now, when I tell you the year of this article, you guys, your other homework is to go find out, and I believe this is correct. Wasn't this about the time when we were, as a people, forbidden from speaking our own language? And that things like heiau and pu'uhonua were considered evil and the work of the devil, and it was pagan. And we were now believers, in the Western religion and the Western God. But here we have Minister Damon enacting a bill to provide for the preservation of heiau and pu'uhonua, and it's pending in the legislature. Yeah, wow. Colonel George W. McFarland, now you guys know that name, McFarland, right? Who lately leased the bishop premises at Waikiki, whereon to establish a seaside annex to the Hawaiian Hotel, had a gang of 7 Japanese at work yesterday morning leveling off some mounds in the Coconut Grove. So if we think about the grove they're talking about, it must be the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. They had occasion to remove a tree and adopted the method of cutting off the roots. There was not much left to hold up the tree when they knocked off work for the noon hour. As the Japanese were approaching the spot at 1 o'clock, the elements performed a regular freak. Interesting language, yeah? A gale rattled the foliage of the tall palms like castanetas. The undermined tree shivered in the blast and began to reel to its fall. Even the ground rumbled, and it is authentically stated, the ava and mullet in the adjacent pond leaped upon their fins clear out of the water. So, right there, interesting enough, a pond with ava and mullet inside. The Japanese, happening to be coming along on this lee side of the tree, retreated for their lives before the falling bones of destruction. Then an uncanny thing happened in reality which would have made a bold exploit of the imagination, even for a Stevenson or a Verne. Flung high in the air by the catapultic motion of the roots was a mass of human bones, entire skulls, femurs, vertebra, ribs, everything. One skull struck, retreating, and when I read this, this is how it was written in the article. So this is not me saying it personally, but this is how this is written in the article. It says, one skull struck a retrieving Jap in the back, and when he turned to see the missile, he almost died of a fearsome horror. So you go through a lot of these old articles, and when they're referring to people's ethnicities, it's very, very, very degrading. So that Golgotha of Waikiki, we're talking about 1898. Crazy, right? Well, I think we did this already. Yeah, we saw that. Yeah. So is that crazy or what? Right? Let's see. I don't believe this one is here. Let me take a look at it. Yes, here it is. Uh, okay. Yeah, we saw that one. All right. My apologies. I think we may have covered it all. I believe we have. Yep, that's it. So we don't have this one on the list, but I've got it in a file, and I will read it to you. So this is regarding the same dig and the same burial we talked about. The article, just so you know, for those of you here on YouTube and on Instagram, is titled "Dead of Long Ago Will Change Abode." Bodies in Waikiki Cemetery of Kauai Church will be exhumed. So the Waikiki Church, where the Princess Kaiulani now is, was a sister church of Kauai. The old Kamoa Ili Ili Church was also another one, an extension of Kauai Church. It is said when both churches were too old to stand and they were broken down, that a lot of those bodies were taken, those bones were taken and reinterred in Kauai. And we may talk about that in a future live. Bodies at Waikiki Cemetery of Kauai Church will be exhumed. So the article says beginning tomorrow morning, Charles Osborne, who is in charge of H. Williams's undertaking parlors, will supervise the exhuming of between 50 and 60 bodies, or what is now left of them, which have been interred during the past half century in the old Kauai Cemetery at Waikiki, just across from the Moana Hotel. Right. And I think we just read that one too, so excuse me for my my senior moment. I know a lot of you were concerned that because of the title of this live, Bones, that we're going to refer to um, what's going on in Lahaina. That is not the case. Um, this actually moved us to share with you, to help all of you understand what's been going on through the centuries with our bones, the bones of our kupuna, our ancestors, that were eventually discovered as we became a civilized people, according to some other point of view, and we became urbanized and all that other fun stuff. And of course, in the process of all of that building and changing the geography and the lay of the land, everybody comes across remains. And so back then, it's a big surprise to people who are new here, who are transplants, making a life here, that they find so many bones of ancient Hawaiians in places they never thought those bones would be. Not only in the area we know today as downtown Honolulu and in Waikiki and the Walmarts and the rails and airports and hotels, but also when they're building sprawling neighborhoods. Bones are found, canoes are found, entire thriving communities are found underground in lava tubes. And so today, because we have this law enacted, when remains are found, everything has to stop. Authorities are called, cultural practitioners, all that stuff has to take place before the project can begin again. Can all of you imagine a time when that was not the law? That law was not around. If you can imagine these people building whatever and coming across what were possibly very significant sites, just bulldozing right over them. And in the case of that hotel that Hurricane Eva, I think, took into the ocean, they found the bones and took the sand where they found the bones and mixed it into the concrete to build, the sidewalk and other portions of that hotel in Kauai. And when the hurricane came, that's one of the things the hurricane took, literally right into the ocean. And so I imagine that was probably the case, here in Honolulu, where a lot of development took place, and there were no laws, and no one was there to stop anyone. They might have very well mixed all of those ancient remains into the sand and probably part of the concrete of a lot of these places that we don't realize actually have these sorts of remains in the walls, the sidewalk, the parking lot, you name it. What's interesting to me is when I meet people on the tours, here online, or in different capacities, who are members of places that are prestige, who are involved in construction, who sort of, acknowledge to me as an aside, or after the event is over, yeah, bro, the place got plenty remains. We found plenty stuff. So what happened? Well, us Hawaiians, us locals, we understand. There's a certain way you have to act when bones are exposed, especially Hawaiian bones, as a protocol. That's us, but we get people from the mainland who don't understand. They don't care. Some of them, one of my friends said, yeah, end up playing with the bones when they find it. So stupid, so dumb. Let's see if I got this. Show the first one. There we go. So yeah, 1928. So the picture I'm showing here on the Facebook Live, and we are, I promise you, in future going to figure out how to how to do this for you live here on Instagram and on YouTube. But it's basically two human skulls, and I don't know if these guys are trying to be funny, but crossbones, and they're laid out on a table. And under these skeletons, with pretty good, perfectly preserved teeth, are newspaper. So they're laid on newspaper. So, so for those of you who are here on the Zoom via Facebook, you can see this. Yeah. So you can imagine doing what I do, taking people on these ghost tours, Waikiki, around town, especially in Waikiki. I understand a lot of people probably nervous about what I'm talking about, what I'm saying. In Waikiki, it's really sort of not like that, because I love the history of the Ke'iulani Hotel, the land it's on. The Moana doesn't seem like we can actually go in there and talk about anything. It's really, really crowded. There's too many people. And it's interesting that a lot of the older properties in Waikiki are the ones that have the most activity. The only reason that the Sheraton is not on the list is because it's another place that's just too much traffic. If you look at a lot of these old maps of Waikiki, you'll see properties sectioned off with Hawaiian names on them, and those are the names of the people those sections of property belong to. And there's some interesting sites that are referred to in these overlay maps in Waikiki. There's a particular location that sort of surprised me, because I didn't think you would find something like that in Waikiki, but there it is, right there. I would think you'd find a location like that, like somewhere up in the mountain near a waterfall, or maybe somewhere in downtown Honolulu, but in Waikiki, yeah. But I guess these things are wherever they choose to be. I know you don't know what I'm talking about. The reason I'm saying it this way is because I don't want to give it away. Because I don't want, and I'll just say it, stupid people to go to this place and do live investigations and stuff like that. It's dumb. So it's better if I keep that to myself, what the location is, but I'll just say something with that level of mana just surprised me that it was in Waikiki. But then, we're talking about the Waikiki in ancient times that was a place where only the highest ranking people lived, so maybe that makes sense. And these high ranking people were smart enough to know how to malama this thing. Today, probably not. Probably not. Hey, where's the garbage bin? There's a story I talked about before, and it happened in the early 70s when they were doing construction at Red Hill, Aliamanu crater. And the thing on the news was unusual, and we came across the newspaper article a couple of years ago. I remember when I saw it, I was, telling my wife, this was the thing that was on the news back in the day. And what it was is they were doing construction to build all those military houses you see on the side of the road, when you're driving past Kaiser Moanalua, on the other side, the Aliapa'akai Salt Lake side. And in the process of constructing all that stuff, strange things were starting to happen. Guys on the job were getting hurt because they unearthed Evie, and this is the early 70s, and nobody cared. Except for the Hawaiians and the locals, they knew well enough not to do certain things. And they knew well enough to pule, to pray. And I remember on the news, they interviewed one of the guys who was operating, I think, the bulldozer. And he said to the news as best as he could, and he was really trying to be articulate, but he said, middle of the day, bulldozing, moving the dirt, and I hear somebody calling my name, Joe, Joe. And I turn around and nobody. And so I keep working, keep bulldozing, and every time I move to this one spot, move the dirt, hear the same thing, calling my name, Joe, Joe. Nobody's there. What's interesting about Aliamanu crater is on the western facing side is the face of it looks towards the west, which in ancient legend says, the westernmost tip is the lele, the leaping place for souls, for spirits to go into the next realm. And this most western facing side of Aliamanu crater was one of those locations where you could leap into the next world of spirits. They talked about large creatures like caterpillars and different types of aumakua that you could see there. And I remember in the early 80s when I was working at McDonald's in Moanalua, I had to go ride with the supervisor to go to another McDonald's to do something or bring something. And I remember she lived in Foster Village, and a couple of other guys from that McDonald's, came with us, and she had to go stop at her house, Foster Village, go get something. And she said, we don't want to be late, so we're going to take the shortcut. And we took the shortcut through that installation and around Aliamanu crater, the western facing side. And when we did that, I remember the entire car just shut down. Radio went off, engine went off, and I remember her going, oh, what's going on? So the car's off, but it keeps rolling. It's just rolling. The second, I guess, we get out of that western facing point of Aliamanu crater, the thing just starts up on its own. The car started up on its own and continued on. Today, I believe there may or may not be access to that place. And so, that area around Aliamanu crater, Aliapa'akai, now Salt Lake, it's a very, very powerful place, not only because, of what's there, leaping places, the remains they found at Moanalua High School when they were digging up for the area where the cafeteria is now. There's a newspaper article that talks about that, and we've got it somewhere. We'll dig it up. And what they found when they were digging the area up. So in an area like Moanalua, where the mana is so concentrated and so many remains are found, it's no surprise to me that there's a spiritual reaction, because today I imagine maybe they do or maybe they don't. I'll go ask my contacts. Anybody here who's watching who's in construction, just let me know. But today I imagine before a project starts, they have to have a blessing, and I don't know if those blessings are for the purpose of everyone's safety and respect to the remains that they may or may not find, or if it's just a placebo, just a formality, because they're going to do it anyway. And I know this is a bit off track, but when I've been approached by what do you call those people? I forget what you call them.
Surveyors.
Surveyors. surveyors approach me, and they want to know what I know about the area, and to me it's kind of pointless because they're going to build anyway. It doesn't matter what you say. And that's happened to me a couple of times, and I don't talk to people like that anymore because I realized, they ask me all this specific information about this location, and it dawned on me they're going to build anyway. So I think the information they're gathering is sort of a backup in case anyone accuses them of not being respectful. That they have some information to back up what they're doing, which is stupid because they're going to do it anyway. So as I was saying, places like Moanalua, where the mana is just concentrated, focused, and you find remains, you get the results of exhuming those remains disrespectfully and not caring. The other thing I wanted to share with all of you regarding remains is that, in reference to your family members, to ali'i, our kupuna were very, very ingenious and very creative in the ways that they would hide their iwi. When you talk about hiding iwi, naturally the first thought that comes to your mind is finding some pocket, some pockmark, some hole somewhere in the mountains where you can hide the bones, or a vast open field of pili or anything like that. Sometimes in the ocean, sometimes in coral reefs. A lot of times, places where you wouldn't even think of to find remains. The reason a lot of our ancestors had to be creative is because it might have been that they were worried about someone finding the remains of their ancestors and, what's the word? It's a word that's stronger than disrespecting them, defiling them, using them the bones to make arrows with, to shoot rats, because that's insulting if you do that with someone's bones. Using the mana of the bones to put curses on their own family members, or as was the case of the one ali'i, using the bones of every person he ever had a contest of ho'opapa with, of riddling. And as I say, a lot of times these games back then, the stakes were very interesting because if you lost, sometimes you literally lost your bones. And so this one ali'i who was, the master of ho'opapa, when he won, he'd take these people and skin them alive, strip the flesh off their bones. If it was merciful, he'd put them in the imu, but he would keep their iwi. And eventually he built a hale iwi, a house of bones, for everyone to see. And, I'm not sure if he was being ho'oyo, if he was showing off, or showing off, his winnings, or just as a warning. If you're going to come and play ho'opapa, you better be ready with your ho'opapa. Or else, I'm going to make you all ho'oha lulu that you don't know what's going on, and pretty soon away. Your ili is gone from your iwi. And it's funny, yeah? The word ili is for your flesh, the word iwi is for your bones. So, it's like you're a couple of letters in the alphabet away from being skinned alive, if you win or lose. But can you imagine, and as you're coming down toward Kaiser Moanalua, heading to town, and you look up on that promontory where the Triple Army Hospital now is, but instead you see like a literal house of human bones. I'm wondering if they bleached those bones or kept them, pristinely white, so that they glistened in the sun. And can you imagine seeing something like that? The psychological impact it must have had on the people back then to witness something like that. The other places where bones are found in plenty are all these smallpox burials in and around downtown. Not just the Kaka'ako area, not just Ko'ula, Ko, that's all that area, Kauai. Ko'ula is like all the way down to um, what's the name of that park? The one where the Children's Discovery Center is. So it's like all the way down that way. And so you look at these old maps, and you can see from Maumala all the way to Ko, there's an exuberance of ali'i that live in that area, and it's also showing different types of hail and places along the coastline. So you can only imagine the burials that were done along that coastline, and what they found as they began to develop and are still developing, especially in the Ward area. And those burials are also found on Ke'aumoku right now, all that construction that's going on. Burials found there, still being found. Of course, the Alamona Shopping Center, that makes sense too. But I know, as long as they keep developing, they're going to keep refining remains. And I hope what Governor Josh Green said was true, that, he will enact a moratorium, for Lahaina. But wouldn't it be great if he just enacted a moratorium in general for the entire state, the entire archipelago? Just give it a break on development. People have trusted me enough to tell me and to trust me with the information of where a lot of significant burials are located that will never be found. Never be found. I remember this person joking with me, the remains I'm telling you about, if they are ever found, remember him telling me there's going to be more than hell to pay. Because corporation, the military, would have to go through a lot of trouble, he said, to develop in these particular areas. And if they do, he said, just sit back and watch. He said you'll have so much stories from those events that you won't be able to tell all of them. The stories will probably live after you, or you'd probably have to have a family member of yours to know about this too. So the rest of those stories could be carried on. Is that crazy? We also talk about, if you go to the Bishop Museum and you go to the kahili room, in those dowels, some of those kahili, you'll see like femur bones, some finger bones, some forearm. And of course in the Bishop Museum, if you look carefully, you'll see pahu drums with molars, teeth in it. And even some bowls, some pula have molars, teeth inside. Some are bones of your conquered enemies, and then some are also bones of your family members. And so we had a very unique way of keeping our family close. And sometimes that would be by, sometimes their fingernails, sometimes their hair, but most times they're iwi, just parts of themselves. That is probably a thing of affection to remember them, to keep them close. But a lot of people who are Hawaiian but very, very religious have told me that they've seen things like this for the first time in the Bishop Museum, and their first reaction is, oh, how are you going to do something like that? Somebody's bones inside that thing. Oh, I know, Cat. And it's funny how people say, oh, I can't do that. I can't have bones in something that I use to brush my hair, or to brush my teeth, or for my spoon or fork. Can't have bones like that. But yet, people have no problem acquiring ivory. Those are bones. And to me, it's funny how people are so skittish about bones, but yet at the same time, for Halloween, the first thing we all collect are skeletons. We all want skeletons. We all want skulls. So I think we have to make up our mind. There are also reading glasses and those hair combs that are also, some are made purely from human bone. And for those of us who are receivers of, or supporters of, or practitioners of kakauhi, pa'uhi, some of those niho, those combs, those needle combs used to pound the ink into your skin for those designs are made from bone. Different types of bone: albatross, manatee, hippopotamus. Ivory, I don't know, because that's kind of illegal. And so it's more than likely, if you're getting one of these kakauhi, that there are some of those bones, those niho, are also made from human bone as well. But I think the human bone in that case has to be a lot more new, probably not ancient. Maybe because those ancient bones are, become a lot more fragile over time. I think the word got out, and I think I could, I've said it already, but this is probably why this place is, has made it a point to do what they do. Or maybe I shouldn't say it. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't say it, but yeah. If you ask me on the side, maybe I'll tell you. And this is concerning bones. Talk about it on the side. And so recently, some friends of ours in the mainland have also talked about places on the continent, that come across First Nations remains, and all kinds of things happening during the building of the project, and also remains of of slaves, mass burials of slaves, that have almost become like a religious site. What time is it? Okay, so there's a story I heard years ago. It really, when you think about it, it's a horrible story, but I liked it because I thought it was just so funny, and that's just my sense of humor. And the story goes like this. At Jameson's restaurant in Haleiwa, in the back, the construction crews were taking down 3 old ironwood trees, 3 of them. And I forgot the reason why they were taking down those ironwood trees. It was for something, maybe to expand the parking lot. I've never been to Jameson, so I don't know. But in the process of bringing up those trees, the workers came across human remains, Evie. Not underneath the ironwood trees, but tangled within the roots of the ironwood trees. And so this is what I was told. So I don't really know if there's actually roots under the ironwood trees or not. The workers, all local, all Hawaiian, refused to do any more work because of the bones exposed to the sun. Everybody could see it. And the construction guy, the site supervisor, was so upset that he was yelling at the Hawaiians and all the locals and just calling them stupid, paganistic, superstitious idiots and get back to work. You've got mouths to feed, bills to pay. Don't be ridiculous. Stop being like this. Just get back to work. It's just bones. And they refused, you know. And that guy in charge was really, really upset. They refused to do anything until someone came. A kahu, a kahuna, a pastor, a rabbi, somebody of some holy patronage came and did something. So eventually they called someone to come and do a blessing to appease the mana, the upset mana of, the bones of these kupuna. The story goes that the following day the guy in charge doesn't show up to work. And he doesn't come back the next day, the next week, the week after that. And they call his house and they call and they call. He never answers the phone. And, this is the guy from the mainland who's in charge of this project. And they found out that he was renting at a place in Haleiwa, toward Pua'ena side. And so some of the workers found the address, went to the house, knocked on the door, and as it goes in these tales, they knock on the door, and the door is open. And they're walking through the house, calling out for this guy, and they finally find him in the sunken living room, and they notice how stuffy it is, and so gloomy and dark because all the blinds are closed, the curtains are closed, windows shut. So the workers go into the sunken living room and, just open everything. Curtains, windows, jealousies, everything. And they are horrified at what they see. And that is that person, that foreman, that site supervisor, is sitting on one of those old rattan couches in his work jeans that are still covered with dirt, his boots he hasn't taken off, his shirt all dirt. And he's sitting there with his eyes closed and he's crying like this. And they haven't quite taken in the entire scene because they're focused on this guy just like this, eyes like this, crying. And then they realize what's going on. When they take in the whole scene, they see everything. They take slow steps backwards, very slowly, cautiously, literally as they walk backwards, toe, heel. The guy in charge is sitting there going like this. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I yelled at you guys and made fun of you and called you these horrible names and I made fun of your culture and your beliefs. He said, I'm so sorry. I thought as a joke, I would come back to work the next day and then call you into my makeshift office and make all of you see this and you would realize you were being stupid, but I didn't realize, he said, it would backfire. And what these men saw in front of them, this table before this foreman, this site supervisor, are two skulls. And in the eye sockets of both skulls are cigars that have been burnt and smoked, which also confused them, because the smell of it was not in that sunken living room. But it seems these two cigars were sort of burning, but as the smoke escaped the eye sockets of these skulls, it seemed as if some invisible thing was there pulling all the smoke back into the eye sockets. And he said, I fell asleep here on the couch. I was so exhausted. And he said, when I woke up, I was blind. I couldn't see. I can't see. I can't see anymore. I'm blind. And what was horrifying to these men who worked for this guy is that his eyes were wide open. They were perfectly fine. Nothing was wrong with them. But he couldn't see. He'd lost his sight. There was a young man I spoke to who was part of a construction crew that was doing work in a location of which I can't name, but it's on Hoftailing. And apparently bones were uncovered. He wouldn't say what happened or what he did. But when he got home, he said that same red dirt in that location where these bones were uncovered were now in his garage, in his house. Not in piles, but looking as if someone or a bunch of someones had taken handfuls of this red dirt from the location where he worked and threw it up against the walls of the garage inside the house and just spewed it all over the place. Red dirt. I was raised Mormon, he said. We all were. Big Samoan family. He said, but me personally, I don't go to church, but I believe in it. So he said when we were doing construction and we found these bones and all the Hawaiians were acting all religious and, chanting and some of them praying in Hawaiian, I thought it was stupid. That's all old paganistic stuff. We don't do that anymore. We don't believe in those things. And so he said, he grabbed handfuls of dirt and started throwing it at the bones like this. Telling all these dumb Hawaiians and locals, you guys are so stupid. This old stuff already. Nobody believed this guy. The answer to what he should do was this. If you believe in the religion that you are a believer of, then go see a person who's in charge of that, who's the head of it, an elder. Talk to that person. Never heard from that person again. So, in regards to bones, whether ancient, whether recent, I'm not sure how people anywhere else handle bones when they're found. Europe, on the continent. But I know here, because it's us Hawaiian people, us local people, those who've been here since the plantation times, when it comes to us, bones are everything, especially when it's the bones of our family members, because the essence of who we are as a lineage, as a DNA, are in those bones. That's us. That's who we are. And so, as I say, many times in the old days we kept our bones close of our family members. Especially if we saw them as spirits, there's no reason to fear them, because that's who we are. Our DNA, completely from head to toe. That's us. So, thanks for hanging out and listening for as long as you did. We posted here, let's see, the link to the Hawaii Community Foundation, and it says, help us in our support for Maui's continuing recovery efforts by donating to the Hawaii Community Foundation's Maui Strong Fund. And day by day we find out so many things that are happening in Lahaina that are being discovered. There's also a lot of what do we call it? Compost fodder BS that's out there. It's disheartening to me that people who aren't even from here are saying the things that they're saying. But our prayers go out to those people who are going what they're going through. And just know that we're listening, we're watching, and always sending mana. Thanks you guys a lot for being with us. We'll be back with another live. And right now, after this prayer, I'm going to have some corn chowder. I don't know about you guys, but there's corn chowder. Here we are. I don't usually do this one, but I feel this one is appropriate to what we're doing tonight. So here we go. O'onani ka makuamau ke keiki me ka uhane no ke akua mau ho'o mai ka ipu ko ke lau ko ke au. Aloha. Ahui ho. Oh. Thanks to you guys over here on YouTube. See you next time.